It's time to down tools for a bit. Welcome to the ToolShed, the influential podcast for anyone and everyone involved in the building industry. Here's your host, Mick Hawes.
Hey folks, welcome to the ToolShed podcast. As we say, it's almost like a broken record at the start of this podcast. Every time we're always looking for tools and platforms and services and ideas and philosophies to help make a builder's business more enjoyable, more professional, more fun, all of those sorts of things, obviously more profitable. And there are many things that builders and small business owners have got into the habit of doing because they think they're the only one who can do it, and they really struggle to let go. And so it becomes very, very costly. And I guess maybe 5 years ago, we started to have conversations in Black Belt about virtual assistants. And it was met with much resistance. It's like, there's nothing that they can do. You need to have somebody right there so you can see what they're doing, and nobody can do what I do, and blah, blah, blah. That was the feedback. Today, we've got builders in Black Belt that have teams of virtual assistants. They found out that they can do things, that they become specialists in certain things and do things much faster, much better, much more professional, give their customers a much, much better quality of an experience, and you start to relax into it and start to find out there are many, many things. So I have Devang Parikh from 24/7 Direct with us today. They specialise in recruiting and I guess training you to work with a virtual assistant, and it's a really important conversation. So welcome to the show, Devang. Really good to have you on the show. This is a terrific topic. It's a really important topic. And so the first question I have is, how the hell did you get involved in this? What did you see that was going on with small business that caused you to be involved in 24/7 Direct?
Thank you so much, Mick, for having me on the show. Look, I was running a contact center, which I started back in 2001. It was a call center based here in Melbourne. And in 2020, when we had COVID, the entire call center got disrupted. We lost all our clients. We went from having 110 staff to 25 staff. That's when I had to think, and I had to pivot, and I had to change the business. And that's when we started offering virtual assistant services. So that's how I got into it.
Yeah. I always ask I always ask the same questions, but it's a good path to go down, that there are specific problems that rear their head, that people see and go, I can create a service, I can create a tool, I can create a platform to fix that. What did you notice that caused you to go, I think we need to create a virtual assistant business? Because we can solve these problems. Now, there are plenty of businesses around the globe that can offer virtual assistant connections and training and access and all of that sort of stuff. But what was it that caused you to go, I think we need to solve these problems with our business? What's your focus there in 24/7 Direct?
So we always offered an outsourcing service, but it was only for call center services. But then in 2020, I realized that there were so many small to medium businesses that that just didn't have the faith in a staff member. They always felt that, no, I need a staff member in my office, and without that, the job can't be done. But then COVID sort of forced our hand, and that's when I started seeing clients asking us that, okay, can you hire virtual assistants for us in the Philippines? And that's when I started seeing the acceptance, because they saw their staff members working from home here in Australia. So they said, if they can do it in Australia, why not get it done from the Philippines? So I think partially I would say the credit goes to COVID, even though we don't want to give much credit to COVID. uh, but I think partially that is one of the reasons. Yeah.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. We're always trying to bring you information that's going to make your life as a builder much easier. So give us a thumbs up and make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode. I think we can give COVID a bit of credit for creating lots of cool things. Like there were, as an example.
Shopping.
Well, yeah, online shopping, all of that sort of stuff. People had to think outside the square, so I got them. It woke them up, got them thinking about different ways of doing it. But even like from a builder's perspective, there's things like we encourage our builders to do what's called a daily direction meeting. And there was always this mindset that we had to be on site. Everyone had to come together, and it was a bit of a hassle to do every day. And then we have COVID and we start having conversations on Zoom everywhere all the time. And it's like, we can have our meeting on Zoom. We don't all have to be in the same room. And it's like, that was available before COVID. They just weren't comfortable with it. And so the comfort level is really important. What sort of resistance have you found when you speak to people about taking on a VA for the first time? What are they worried about? What are they concerned about?
I think people are worried about whether whether they'll be able to find the right staff member, whether a staff member in the Philippines can actually do the same job as someone here, whether how easy or difficult it is going to be to train the person, whether they'll be able to understand the context of Australia, and just about monitoring whether the staff members are actually going to be working from the Philippines or not. So I think these are the main questions. And I think what was the biggest question that I was asked was about training, that how do I train? Because our clients weren't used to training someone over a video call.
Yeah.
Or having processes and systems which you follow. Because of COVID, there are now so many apps like Slack and Trello and Teams and Zoom and all of these things, which you can now use to make your life easier rather than having to travel to one central place, as you said, to a site. So yeah, I think these are the biggest questions they ask, and especially as I said, training. How am I going to train my staff member?
Yeah. It's a great question, and when you unpack it, because I think that when you've got somebody here in the office with you and you're chatting every day and what have you, there's an assumption that they know what they're doing. They've seen it. I've shown them before, all of that sort of thing. And then they leave and somebody new comes on and it's like, what do I do? And it's back to square one. And it's like when you use a virtual assistant and you're forced to learn how to, number one, build a system. Number two, build the steps to the education of how to use that system. You can have somebody follow that system and you get a really high quality result. If something happens to them, they go on holidays or they leave for whatever reason, somebody else with the right personality can come in, happy days. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, a majority of the business owners that I've spoken to, I think majority, I could say, majority of the small business owners is that they don't have a system. It's everything's in their head.
Yep.
And they can only train the person up when they have a person, but otherwise they can't write it down. And that was our biggest challenge. So we trained all our staff and said, by default, when you start getting trained by a client, you have to start preparing a process, a system, and put it all on paper. So that if ever you're not there, or if ever the client stops using us and decides to hire someone locally, they can just take that system and give it to that new staff member who can sort of familiarize. I think half the job is done by just reading that manual.
Yeah. It's just a really fascinating concept to me. If we're talking about the business owner teaching the person next to them how to do the job, and then maybe they get a VA and they teach them how to do the job, but they do it the same way without the system, without the written, as you've just said. Yeah. And my suspicion is, if the same person, generally the business owner, is training all of the new people are getting trained by the same old-schooled, old-fashioned, potentially flawed process that the business owner came up with ages ago. And so everybody is less than effective that you bring on, versus having a system like you're talking about, writing it down. And I want your thoughts and your experience on how a VA can contribute to the team, because I know from my perspective, we're on our second VA now, who you've been communicating with, Cliss. Yeah. Our first one was Christy. Absolutely brilliant. Christy got an opportunity to go to Canada. Cliss came in. It was seamless, but both of them contribute. They're really valuable contributors to our team. They come up with great ideas. It's not just passing on tasks for somebody to do. They're actual contributors. How do you find that?
So I think, you know how I told you that a business owner has everything in his or her head, and they're only prepared to train a person without writing things down. and that's fine. But as you said, the flaws also pass through with the training. And the thing is, as a business owner, for example, if I just take my example, as a business owner, if I come across a hindrance or a change, then I can deviate myself, but that staff member doesn't. And that's where the flaws have flowed in or have passed through. And that's why you need a process and a system. And I think if you have a good relationship, or if you've empowered your VA or virtual assistant to think outside the box, then they're going to help you improve, not just improve the processes, but also look for gaps, look for inefficiencies, which can be improved. VAs often will tell you that, there is an app to do some of the data entry, which can be done a lot faster, easier, it's more accurate. And plus, sometimes the VAs don't like, most human beings don't like something which is repetitive. So what we do is we try and automate it. And that's exactly what the VA does, and says, okay, this job can be done easier, faster, quicker, and there'll be more accuracies if you use a particular app rather than me having to do it manually.
Yeah. Now, I've heard, a few horror stories from people, even in our group back in the early days, when, they go, VA, great idea. So they headed into the wild blue yonder on the interwebs and started to try and recruit a VA and train them themselves and build their own systems and processes. And they went, this is rubbish, I'm out. What are the mistakes that you see business owners making when they're hiring a VA instead of using a service like 24/7 Direct, where you can get guidance on a whole bunch of things, the recruiting, the management, how to build systems, all of that?
So when a business owner wants to hire a staff member, it depends on how much work they have. They may not need a full-time staff member. Yes. They may need someone only for about, let's just say, 10 hours a week. And for 10 hours a week, generally companies like us wouldn't take on those clients. But when it comes to, full-time, yes. So for smaller 10-hour jobs, business owners will often go to an online website like Freelancer or Fiverr or something like that, and find a staff member there. The problem with that is that staff member is not going to be available to them all the time. As soon as they find something full-time, they're going to leave. So that's the one mistake. But again, that's a situational mistake. They just sometimes a business owner can afford only 10 hours a week. But when they get to full-time, when the business grows and now they want to hire a full-time staff member, the one mistake they do is hiring from a company like, an online website, because again, they're not permanent staff, and there'll be a bit of a churn. The person stays on the job for a few months and then leaves. And every time a person leaves, you're back to square one, because now you've got to hire another person, go through the same interview process, and start training them. And plus, when they go through these websites, they haven't done an extensive background search on the candidates. Whereas when you go through a company like us or anyone like us, we've got multiple interviews, we've got online assessments, background checks, reference checks. So we present candidates to the client, which are often risk-free. So that's the first mistake. The second mistake is they think that, okay, I've got a staff member now, I can just put them on the phone, I can just put them on the computer and they'll start doing whatever I ask them to do. But I think just like having a local staff member, you've got to build a relationship.
Yep.
Remember, they're not in your office, so you've got to have video calls with them regularly to build that relationship, to build the trust. Because if you're just going to throw things and if you're not going to build that relationship with them, and if you're not going to invest the time in training them, then you're not going to get the output that you want. You effectively want someone that is going to replace you.
Yep.
And to do that, you've got to train them accordingly as well. You can't put in a half-ass effort.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think these are the 2-3 big mistakes that business owners make. And finally, occasionally you'll have a situation where you've gone through the whole recruitment process, you found someone, but then now that one person, let's say, resigns after a month. And at that stage, you feel that, okay, fine, this has happened. This solution is never going to work, and I'm going to go back to hiring someone locally. I think that is the biggest mistake people make, is because you're dealing with humans, you're not dealing with machines here. And often people will have some mistakes. They might have buyer's remorse. The candidate, the staff member might think that, okay, I was expecting it to be X, but it's now Y, so I'm going to resign, or I've got a better job or something like that. And I don't think you should just throw it out of the window. You've got to give it a few attempts to get that right staff member.
I'm Mick Hawes from Builders Business Black Belt. There's one roadblock in your business that, when identified and fixed, a whole bunch of other frustrating problems will disappear at the same time. So much time, effort and money is thrown at problems in an attempt to fix them that often doesn't fix the problem and just leads to more frustration. And if this cycle continues, it increases stress and just makes running your own business an unenjoyable pain in the ass. And it doesn't have to be that way. Being a business owner can give you more time and financial freedom, and it can be super rewarding if you do it right. The key is to find your unique roadblock, which you're often too close to the action to see yourself. How do I know this? I've been working in peak performance and business coaching for over 3 decades, and with builders specifically for over 10 years, and I see it every day. So I encourage you to take the Builder Success Scorecard right now. The link to take the scorecard is in the description. It's free. It'll take you about 90 seconds, and you'll have some quality feedback in your inbox before you know it. Yeah, I think it's no different to hiring a staff member locally. They're humans, they've got needs, they've got ego, all of that sort of stuff.
Yes.
And they need to be treated well, they need to be understood, they need to have joy and passion and interest in what they're doing. And I know people that I work with that have had VAs for 10, 12 years, the same VA for 10, 12 years. And when you've got that sort of a relationship and generally a VA is focused in on a speciality more often than not. So that's what they're doing, and they do it very well, very effective, high quality, fast. And if you're trying to do it or getting somebody in your office to do it and they kind of have to do this, that and the other, they're swapping around to all these different things, and the quality is never as good.
It's like,
and just
on it's like asking a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
You've hired a really good bookkeeper. You've had them for about 6 months. And now you tell that bookkeeper that, okay, can you please start doing social media for me as well?
Yeah.
That's just an absolute insult to the person.
Yeah.
But it's not right, because they may not enjoy creativity. They may only enjoy numbers, and that's what they're good at. You can give them other admin tasks, but to go from accounting or bookkeeping to getting them to do social media, which they may not be inclined to do that. So that's one of the mistakes as well.
Yeah, and you sort of mentioned that somebody might only get a VA for 10 hours, and as soon as you said that, I thought I would say that person really doesn't understand the power of what a VA can do for the business, because it wouldn't be long. I'm only going through my own experience and seeing others that you go, well, we'll just get them to do this because it's only about 10 hours a week. And then they do such an amazing job that you go, well, they could do this and this and this. And it sort of expands out to full time, and now with our Cliss, we're looking for platforms to help make her day easier and more effective, to take the load off her, because it's just going boom, 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 with the imagination.
And the possibility is endless. We've had so many situations where a client has hired one staff member, and when the first staff member has started, within the first week, they've come back to us and said, oh, we've now got a requirement in this department or another department, or I'd like someone to do XYZ for me. So that team grows very fast. And that happens when, going from, no, I don't want to outsource, to now, because they've seen the possibility, they'll start doing this for every possible non-revenue generating work that they have in their business.
Yeah. So what's the pathway like with 24/7 Direct? What's the pathway for somebody who's listening to this? They go to the website, hit the get started button, I expect. And what happens? What do they expect?
So we've got quite a few resources on the website. They can watch videos that we've recorded in the past, but otherwise they can just go to the website. We've got a lead form. Click on that, fill up their details. They can book a meeting directly into our calendar, or else we'll get in touch with them and maybe book a time for us to show them what we can do. We'll have a couple of our staff members on those calls so they can get familiarized what it is to be dealing with a Filipino staff member. After that, if they want to go ahead, we start with the recruitment. Typically takes us about 2 weeks. Within those 2 weeks, we do our recruitment due diligence, which is a couple of interviews, background checks, reference checks, and then we'll present the candidates to the client. Now, with us, the client is the final decision maker. So we present the candidates to the client. The client does the final interviews. We'll present 4, 5, 6, 10 candidates. We present candidates until the client is happy and is ready to hire someone for the business.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a very similar process to what we experienced as well, and it's just, to me, it felt frictionless because, and I guess the other thing that I'd like your opinion on, thinking back to that process, is the business owner needs to get quite clear on the purpose of the VA that they're creating.
It's understanding the pain point.
Yeah, and I guess you then go out and try and find recruits that are appropriate for what the business owner gets, and you do a fair bit of shuffling and sorting before it's presented to the business owner. I'm expecting that's how it felt to us, because all of the candidates we were presented, and we only get presented with 3 at a time, they were all great. Like, it was a difficult decision.
And that's a good problem to have if it's difficult to make that decision. But effectively, when we present our candidates, before we even start with recruitment, we have a kickoff meeting, and we want to understand what a typical day is going to look like for this staff member, and not just why they're hiring a VA now, but what can this VA do for them in 6 to 12 months?
Yes.
How do they see this role growing? Because we want to hire someone for them who is going to grow with the role, and who's going to be useful for them 12 months to 24 months moving forward. Because remember, when we hire a staff member doesn't stay in a job just for the salary.
Yep.
majority of the times, yes, they want a salary, but they also want to grow with the role. They want to add value to their own career so that they learn something new. So we don't want to hire someone who's overqualified. We want to find someone at that right level who's going to grow with the role. Yeah, so that's how the process works. And another thing that we do is, when a client is, let's say, for example, they're hiring for an admin assistant. One of the things that we do is we run a trial program or a nesting program or a fishbowl program where we present candidates to the client, and the client, instead of, if they want to hire one staff member, instead of selecting one staff member or one candidate, we ask them to select the two best candidates. And we place both the candidates as staff members in their business for the first month. And they get to use both the staff members for their business for the first month. They only get charged for one,
Yeah.
but they get to use two staff members. And that will tell them that first month of working with both the staff members will tell them who is the best staff member for their business. Because it's one thing to do the background checks and the resumes and the interviews, but it's something completely different once they actually start working for you. Now you're seeing whether do they have the right attitude, are they culturally a fit for their organization, and that 1 month gives them the opportunity to decide who they want to retain, and the other person, we place them with another client. So that's another advantage where you can try out two staff members for the price of one.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's been fantastic having you on the podcast. I'm a big fan of using virtual assistants, whether they be in Australia or in the Philippines or whatever, because it really focuses the business owner on systems and process and communication. And I think that sort of dissipates when the team is on the ground, all the team is on the ground. It forces you to do that sort of stuff. So it's a fascinating conversation, and I'm always excited to talk about this sort of stuff because I think, particularly in the building industry, more people need to use specialists to be able to increase the quality of their client experience. It's really important.
And I'm glad you're doing this because that the education piece that you provide, I've seen so many tradies that have, or in the building industry that have started using our services. They had none, and they had nobody. They or sometimes their wife would be doing everything. And they, when I had my initial calls, they would say, "I'm spending all my Saturday and Sunday doing my invoicing. I'm late on my payments." And I think that education piece that you're providing, I think it's so much of a benefit to the construction sector.
Yeah, excellent. Super important. Like I said, it gives people the opportunity to get their life back, but it also improves the business. And there was, and I'd love your thoughts on this as well, just before we bail, is that having a conversation with somebody else about this just a month or so ago, addressing the whole issue where some people go, oh, you're taking jobs away from Australians and you're paying the people in the Philippines very small amounts of money and all of this sort of stuff. And I don't agree with it. And his response was, I have a business in Australia. If I had have hired people on the ground in Australia, I never would have been able to hire or get what I needed to get done to grow the business. And I ended up hiring 6 other people in Australia as my business grew, but I wouldn't have been able to have grown my business had I not had the virtual assistant team taking things off my plate so I could build the business. And to me, it's just like a win-win, particularly if you've got a good relationship with your virtual assistant and you're treating them well and they are enjoying what they're doing, they're being paid well. It just allows the business to grow. What are your thoughts on that?
I was going to give you that same example, in a different context, that we were working for a real estate firm and they had 6 or 7 property managers. And with a property manager, there is no promotion. You keep doing the same thing day in, day out.
Yeah.
When they came across to us, they were able to, out of the 6, they promoted 4 to become sales agents, which then ended up selling property for them. They started making a lot more money, and that was a big promotion for them, which basically in turn grew their business. And the 2 property managers that they had, they kept them, and then they hired more staff with us in the Philippines who did all the the grunt work in the background. But eventually, their business grew a lot more than what it was at that time, and they would not have been able to do it, or they couldn't do it, primarily because they just couldn't afford it. Because the property management division was just costing too much for them.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, it's a win-win. You know, I think that hopefully Kliss, she'll watch this because she has to edit it, enjoys being on our team. I know Christy, who's over in Canada now, she probably will watch the podcast as well. She's sort of staying connected. I think it was really sad when she left, you know, but she had a great opportunity to move over to Canada. So that's just how life works out sometimes. But as I said, I love having this chat. It was an absolute pleasure to meet you, learning about 24/7 Direct. We'll make sure we put all of the website and etc. links in the description so people can reach out to you. But thanks again for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. You have a good day.
Thanks. So that's it for this episode. I hope it dispelled a few myths. I know that still speaking to people, there's a little bit of resistance with this sort of thing, but there are many, many things you can let go. And the benefit to your business when you start thinking about systems and procedures that need to be so clear and concise that you can pass them on to somebody that is remote and get a really high quality result is such a fantastic improvement to your business. And if there are businesses out there like 24/7 Direct that can guide you as to how to best do that, you're going to save a whole bunch of time and a whole bunch of frustration trying to figure it out yourself. You might as well go to somebody who's already invented the wheel, strap some extra wheels on and go fast, you know. So reach out, have the conversation. If you do, please give us some feedback. We love the feedback that we get from people that reach out to different services and platforms and people that have been on the podcast just to get that feedback as to how it's all going. So that is it for this episode of The ToolShed. We'll be back before you know it with another episode. I'm Mick Hawes from Builders Business Black Belt. That is all. I am out. Bye for now.
You've been listening to The ToolShed. If this podcast struck a chord with you, make sure you spread the word by sharing it with your mates in the building industry. We love your help to make the building industry better for everyone involved.